you've recommended so many books to me and even brought me books and said, I really like this book, but I'm probably not going to finish it.
Well, that is, so what makes you, what makes
Been
you
called out.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and we are the Core Four today. It's been a while, guys.
That's Martin's fault.
Yeah.
I have been on the road. I've been on tour.
Where have you been?
Well, let's see. I was in. I went to the Great Hearts Conference. Well, there's a lot of. I went to the Great Hearts Conference in Phoenix, and then I was visiting my stepmother and my wife's sisters. And then I did something else. What did I do? And I have to look at my calendar. I forget.
Well, we've missed you.
Well, you had your wisdom teeth taken out.
Oh, I had, right. And then I had my wisdom teeth taken out.
Which was like major surgery.
Well, yeah, it was. I had all four of them taken out, and two of them were impacted, and it was. Yeah.
The worst problem for him was no coffee for a couple of days.
No coffee for 4 or 5 days, and I almost didn't make it.
Are you on the upswing?
Yeah, I mean, the really rough days are, well, the first day was really rough. The first 3 to 5 days, and then you can start eating more normal things. Mm. And then after 10 days, you're supposed to be able to eat just about anything, but still I'm on like day 18 or something. So but it was so the impacted teeth, I think, my lower jaw, I can still feel in my lower jaw.
I'm just surprised you made it this long without them insisting on taking them out.
Well, they were, I mean, my teeth were crowded, and they pulled teeth before they put braces on me when I was little, but that still apparently was not enough because they were still crowded, and my bottom teeth were still crowded. That's interesting to me
since you have such a big mouth.
All right.
Well, moving on.
You literally opened yourself up.
Yeah, I mean, here I am suffering from post-wisdom teeth removal syndrome, and you say something like that.
The nerve. Well, what are you reading, Tanya?
I'm reading. Louise Penny's new novel, The Black Wolf. The Black Wolf.
I just don't. I couldn't.
Which
Clearly,
I'm
we know
so
it's on her
excited
list
about. I just love her writing, and I love her plots. I love her characters. And I'm reading. So I finished with God in Russia by Father Walter Chiswick. And so now Jeff bought me at the Jesuit bookstore, I guess, in Cincinnati, the book that goes alongside it called He Leadeth Me, which is the book that he really wanted to write, which is very much how he felt and his relationship with God and during all that time. So it goes all the way back through. It goes back to before he got arrested, and I'm really enjoying that I mean, it's like a devotional, really, because that was what was missing to me in that book was his thoughts,
his emotional world.
Yes,
Well, and I think it's in the introduction of With God in Russia, because that's the book I'm reading. So we're going to skip me after this one. But the Jesuit that co-wrote it with him, that helped him write With God in Russia, like, he makes clear that when Walter came back from Russia, nobody knew if it was going to actually be him. And so, because he'd been gone for 20 years, 30 years,
Well, they thought he was dead.
And they thought he was dead. They thought the Russians might have, come up with somebody else in order to make this deal go through. And so I think that first book With God in Russia was an attempt to show, no, I really am this guy. And then later on, that's when he came back and said, okay, here's my spiritual journey. And I think when you write a book like that, you don't know what kind of interest people have in your story. And then after the first book, I
got the idea that he didn't really want to do the first book and that it was too painful for him at that point.
Yeah.
And then it looks like he wrote this more deeper book about what he was actually thinking and feeling 9 years after he was released. And so I think they pushed the first one, and I think he did it because the Jesuits wanted it, and he was, obedient. But I don't think his heart was in it, and I do see that we should have read them side by side, really, because then you're going to you could read Alberton Years and then read He Leadeth Me in the Alberton Years. That's really probably what we should have done.
Oh, that's wonderful. Martin, what are you reading?
Well, okay, so Andrew Pudawa and I are doing, last several years we've been doing a discussion of just a list of books of some kind. Last time we did dystopian books. I forget what the year before was. This year we're doing a discussion of children's books, our favorite children's books. And so he had one on his list that I had never heard of, called Momo by Michael Ende, who did the Never-Ending Story, I think was his more famous one. I never heard of this, so I thought, well, we're going to be discussing it, so I better read it. And so I just started it 2 days ago, and I am utterly enchanted. I think I now, because I remember seeing the previews for the movie and not thinking it looked very good, so I never did see the movie or read the book, The Never-Ending Story. So when I finish this, I'm going to go and read that, because there are just certain children's writers. I always have this thing I say to my wife when I pick up whenever I pick up a children's book or something and read it to the kids or whatever, that was really good. And there's just something magical about the writing. And I would say, it's got the magic. So I sat down there, I read through 2 or 3 chapters, and I turned to my wife, who was sitting there this weekend, and I said, it's got the magic, And there's just something, we talked about.
So it's a chapter book.
It's a chapter book.
Not illustrations.
No, it's about this
I've never
girl
heard of it.
who just I told my wife she's sort of a catalyst for goodness. And so her gift is to listen. People will come to her and they tell her their troubles, and she would never say anything. She would just listen, and just that helped people. And I have said this for a long time. This is kind of a theory I've always had, is that most people just need somebody to listen to them.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that they may have a problem, but you're not there. I had a friend who was like a counselor, and he was always wanting to give them the solution. And that wasn't necessarily the right solution. And I thought I have other people who all they do is listen. And what they do works a whole lot better than trying to come up with a solution for this person. They just need somebody to talk to, somebody to listen to them.
There's a children's book called The Rabbit Who Listened. It could be the bunny. It's a bunny or the rabbit who listened. And it's beautiful. And it's about a bunny who listens. And the illustrations are beautiful, but
I've never heard of that.
I can bring it in. We have it at home. We like to give it to people when they have babies.
Is it a picture book?
Yeah, it's a big picture book. And it's just a bunny who encounters all these different people that need someone with a heart to listen.
That sounds nice.
I'll bring it in. Oh, you'll cry. Okay. Anyway, but it's a good message to bring to children. Yeah. I am halfway through Remarkably Bright Creatures. And I am loving it.
Okay.
Oh, it's lovely.
I've heard good things about it. It just didn't sound like a book I would like.
Well, if I told you the premise, you would be probably even more off. But you know how sometimes when you explain a book outside of anybody who's read it, you think that people would think you're crazy?
Right.
But it's beautiful. It's all these characters who eventually become, I think, connected. I'm not at that point yet, but they're supposed to all connect pretty soon. And it's lovely.
I just have never, when I picked it up in bookstores, I've just thought something about the premise turned me off.
An octopus that can think I know. I know it's silly, but it is delightful. It's funny. Okay. It's well done.
Maybe I'll give it a try.
I love it. I've been liking it so far. I'm halfway through. We'll see. Well, let's tackle next a listener question. We've got one from Sandra. She wrote us at our podcast inbox, podcast@memoriapress.com. So please, if you have a question, write us. We would love to answer it on the air or even in one of our mailbag episodes. So please write us. Sandra says, regarding your podcast, October 21 of this year, entitled Why Writing Things Down is Important, you mentioned having only beautiful and good books available to children and not being able to trust the public libraries because they have bad books. And then she says, what would be in a book about spiders that would be bad? And I think that's a reference to something Tanya said.
It is. And I wasn't clear enough about it. But what was on my mind was the fact that when my kids were little, and they needed to find a book on spiders, I could take them to our public library and set them down in the children's section and sit in a chair, and I could read while they could look for books about spiders, read them. And it didn't matter what they pulled off the shelf. It was safe and not something that I would think, I don't want my child exposed to that. And you can't trust that anymore. Now, children's libraries are full of more contemporary social justice issues. I don't know agenda-driven, yes, books for children that I wouldn't necessarily have wanted my young child exposed to. So now when I go to the public library with children, if that happens, you have to go through and find the books. You literally have to just go through and read the books before you can hand them to the child. And so I was just mourning the loss of that safety and of children being able to freely look through shelves of books and find what interests them. And I just don't, maybe you can still trust it in some rural libraries, but I think I would definitely be checking it out before I turned a child loose now, or even in a bookstore.
And the irony is, if you had to come up with the paradigm case of a trustworthy public official, it was the school librarian. I mean, they were the most.
That's right.
They were policing it more than anybody else would ever police it. And now you just don't have that because everyone's socially conscious now and everyone's about issues now. And
which is
political.
That's great
now.
for adults, but for children, they don't need to be involved in political social justice issues. But no, there is nothing in a book about spiders that I can think of that would be something I wouldn't want a child to read.
Sure. Just an example.
That was just my example of what we used to do, when we would need to go find some generally science books or biographies or for things we were studying. We could safely do that. And now I just don't think parents can.
Well, and in our library in Boyle County, Kentucky, when our kids were growing up, there was the librarian Carl, and actually an organization I was working for had done some survey of libraries to find out if they were keeping older books. And he was the only one of all the librarians that they had, and they actually had a little comment from him in this report, who had who curated the books, who made sure that there were certain classics in there, and that you focused on the classics and that you preserved those, and you didn't follow whatever library association's recommendations were for taking certain books out and putting certain other books in.
And that is a problem now.
Yeah, it is a problem.
Is not, just getting rid of the old and putting the new, whether it's good or not.
Well, and when my wife and I were first prepping to have foster kids in our home, and people just like, well, here, you may want this kid stuff, you may want this kid stuff. And then there was a stack of books, and she's like, you're going to want to read these, aren't you? And I was like, yes, I will. And I threw out half of them. But then, as much as we curated, then when we had foster kids in our home and they're required to go to the public school, and then they're coming home with books from the public library, not from the school library, it's the same problem. Because what do? They just turn kids out to, you have the same kind of librarian at the school library as you do at the public library. And then they're just turning kids out saying, go find something that you like.
Right.
Well, it could be anything.
Right.
It could be. And I'm going to segue into our topic.
Oh, sure.
While we talk about children's books, there is a very popular children's book, and I may get lots of hate mail for this, that I think is horrible. And my students read it and loved it, and they said, you've got to read this book.
Can I guess what it is?
Yes.
Captain Underpants.
No.
That one's awful too.
It is awful. That is awful. But this one won the Newbery.
Really?
It's holes. by Louis Sachar. Have you read that?
I've heard about it, and
Didn't
there was
they make a movie?
Yeah, they made a movie.
Yes,
about it.
and
Yeah,
it's about it's about bullying and just children treated badly by adults. I just hated that book, and it's so popular. And I think, is there something wrong with me, or am I the sane person in the insane world? I just didn't find anything uplifting about it or that would be helpful to children. I don't know. I just don't like it. And I think it's harmful even.
Well,
let's.
Sorry, since we're on this topic, I know you want to get us moving, Jess.
I know.
But what's interesting about that, I don't know why I was thinking about this lately, but all kids, no matter how good of a home they are raised in, feel at some point that they're the victim. Right.
And this
and
really.
that kind of book feeds that idea rather than saying, no, at times I'm wrong. I need to, take control over my actions and I need to be better. Right. Which a lot of times with kids, that's the case. Sometimes, no, the kid is in fact the victim. I'm not saying that. But those kinds of stories do feed that idea. And we wonder why we have that mentality throughout.
And there's also the issue of the wrong medicine for a disease, or giving a child, you wouldn't give a child medicine that they didn't need. And some of these books, I think, are trying to be therapeutic, that there's kids out there who live these terrible lives because of their family situation or whatever. And so we write a book about it so we can talk about it. Well, my child is not one of those children that needs that. All that's going to do is introduce ideas into their heads that they don't really need to be thinking about, and problems that they're not having in their lives and they don't need to think about right now. They can think about later when they're more mature. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so.
But I think that even children that have had terrible experiences, what they need is beauty in their reading.
That's the other side.
They need nobility and they need courage. They need books about
something higher.
Yes. Yes. Something that gets beyond their experience and gives them hope.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Why are we dwelling on it? These bad things. Let's get beyond these bad things.
Got it. Okay. Well, I don't know if we're going to get beyond the bad things right now.
Oh, no.
Because we have one more question from Sandra that we're actually going to use for our entire episode. She says, I'm curious as to your definition of good and bad books. And that leads us into slightly dangerous territory because today we're doing something I'm not sure we've ever done before, and that's talking about the worst books we've ever read. Not just books we maybe mildly disliked, but books that made us groan and roll our eyes, which, if I know you guys, I think there's been some groaning and eye rolling with some of the books you've read, which I just heard about it, right? Holes.
Yes. That's for the one for children.
So before we start naming names, what makes a book bad? Is it poor writing, bad moral vision? Is it, this is boring enough for me to just set aside? So what, and I would also love to know, can something be well written and still be bad?
Yes.
Yeah, makes it even worse.
Right. Okay.
And
I want to hear from you. What makes it bad? Ooh, okay.
Okay. Where is it? Oh, Love in the Time of Cholera.
Oh, really?
Oh my God.
I had that on my list.
Marquez. Yes.
That was okay. I've never.
So we did this book years ago in the Memoria Press Book Club.
Isn't it kind of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It's and I remember, like, I was reading this and I was just appalled, right? And when I'm reading, I do not appreciate beautiful writing in the way Tanya and other people in the company do.
Because it is beautifully written.
It is beautifully written.
What do you mean by that? That it's enchanting?
The prose is just every sentence is well tooled.
And it takes place in South America, and it's lush and it's tropical.
Yeah, the setting is beautiful.
Yes.
But even just the writing itself, as Tanya said, like every sentence was a beautiful sentence. But what it was about was repulsive. But it was very interesting to see in that conversation that there were people that, because it was so beautiful, the writing was so beautiful, they were willing to accept the content. Right? That's the danger. Right? That's the danger of art, is something that's actually bad can be presented as something good, right? And that's where you have to be careful. So that's
okay.
So yeah, something can be beautifully written and be a bad book.
Yeah, and we
Okay,
had
what else?
There was another person in our office who read it with us. It may have been his recommendation. I
I
remember.
think it was.
And so we the next it was the next day after we had a. Did we have a discussion on that one?
I think you missed it. I missed the discussion. So
I was out of town or something. So I came back in and he was sitting in a cubicle next to me, and we started talking. Somehow he brought this up. Well, what did you think of the book? And I expressed what I thought of the book. He said, "Well, what do you?" And so we started this discussion, and so the rest of the staff just surrounded us, listening to this discussion about this book. And I forget a lot of the particulars.
We were all
now,
invested.
You were all invested, and I think you all agreed with me. But I don't know.
Well, I think we did, but there was this odd dynamic of that. I think out of all of us, you were going to be the one person he respected. And so we needed you. Like, we had all made those arguments, but we needed you to come in and
But
put the hammer down.
I don't think it changed his mind.
No, I don't think it did. Because there's just something you have to see in that book. And I can't even remember now whether I thought this is what the author was saying or this is just what I saw in the book. But that scene at the end where they are on that boat and the man and the woman in an illicit relationship and they are everything around them. The whole environment is desert now. It's all the forest is gone.
That symbolic?
I just felt like this is symbolic because and everyone avoided them because they had moral cholera.
Yeah, and I remember you saying this was a reduction to the absurd.
Yes,
that it's presented as something good, but if you pay very close attention, like the author's trying to see how far he can take you.
Fascinating.
But you're supposed to recognize that it's something bad, but this
but you would have to
something bad.
Yeah, so but most people would read the book and not know that.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's still even if my reading of it was correct, it's still not probably a good book to have out there because most people wouldn't see that.
Well, I think for an adult to read it it's fine. Yeah. It didn't harm us to read it, and it was beautifully written. But it's definitely not a book for young people.
And I would not recommend it just because I felt like it's one of those books that is written to be read by academics or award-winning people or award-giving people.
Right.
Not a book for the normal person.
Which is what almost the definition of modernism, of literary modernism. It's a book written to be studied in a college department somewhere, which are among the worst of the worst books.
Well, I was going to say, I majored in English, and so many of the books that I remember, it's amazing to me. I don't remember the bad books that I've read in the past 10 years, but I remember the books I hated in college. And it wasn't that they were bad books. I think I just wasn't, I don't think maybe my faith was mature enough. Maybe I was mature enough for books like Catcher in the Rye, Sons and Lovers, Madame Bovary.
See, I had Madame Bovary in my list.
I just feel like I should probably try them again. I'm not Catcher in the Rye. I will never read that again. But Sons and Lovers and Madame Bovary, there's some reason that they're still being published. And I think maybe I missed that.
So from what I can see on this table, everybody's got quite a list of books they didn't like. Is anything on there a classic? I see a lot of yours.
It shouldn't be.
Well,
no, that's not true. Because Wuthering Heights is on my list.
What?
Robinson Crusoe is on my list. I just don't like them.
Me too.
I think Wuthering Heights has no redemption in it at all.
Catherine and Heathcliff?
Yes, the characters are terrible.
Well, are you supposed to like them?
Well, I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
Should there be some kind of redemption in a book?
Not necessarily.
Well, there's none to me in Wuthering Heights.
I feel like, and maybe I'm just ceding too much to the opinions of others, but I always compare it with Jane Eyre for whatever reason. I guess they're because similar settings and
right.
And I love Jane Eyre. I absolutely adore Jane Eyre. But Wuthering Heights, I've read it twice, and there may be some feature of good literature I just didn't notice, but it's dark
It's
and
sad.
it's I just did not enjoy it.
I don't
and
even find it sad. I'm just like,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I
I'm
thought it was
ready for you
sad.
people to go away.
Okay.
yeah, and again, I'm perfectly willing to see that I just am not seeing something of value in it and not appreciating it enough. Maybe that's
okay.
it. But
Well, and I think that's the attitude when you talk about classics that are on our list of books we didn't like. Like, I mean, I've got Little Women on here.
That'll make you groan. It's huge.
And, but hopefully we all have the attitude of like, okay, I really tried. I couldn't even make it through it. Okay. And I think I was mainly just bored.
mhm,
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
yes,
And
It doesn't mean it was a bad book.
Right.
That's right. And I would say that I'm not going to tell other people don't read that. I'm going to say there's a reason this has persisted. There's a reason that it's a part of this our culture's like collective mind. I just can't get it, right? So having that posture of humility towards those classic books, I think, is important.
Yes.
Even though,
absolutely.
Even though
and we need to try them again.
and I don't know if it's on your list, Tanya.
What?
But I wondered if you were going to put The Great Gatsby on your list because
I did not because
I wanted to
because-
talk to you about that
Mhm.
because some you need to reread.
that's exactly right. Well, it took me four reads and many discussions, but absolutely, I totally switched on that. And that has changed my attitude toward books that I don't like. And I do think I should go back and reread all of these books that I don't like and see what I can find in them, but I don't want to. I never want to read Albert Camus again. I never want to read James Joyce again. I just,
Well, and
Well,
I think
can-
Martin, hold on. You said you made a comment about whether they should be classics. And I would say anything in the 20th century,
we don't know yet.
20th and 21st centuries, we just don't know yet,
Right.
Mhm.
right?
It does stand a test
we,
of time.
We look at James Joyce as he's part of the canon. No, he's not.
Mhm.
He's too recent,
mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like I would just make that point about classics.
Sure.
Well, and when we were talking about not Jane Eyre was the
Wuthering Heights.
Wuthering Heights.
When we were talking about Wuthering Heights, I think that there are species of hatred for literature. So to dislike that book is one thing because that's written in a different time in the late 90s. It's still the classic period, if you want to say that. And then you have these books that are written. There's a book I have called "The World Changed in December 10th, 1910," and what that was a reference to was a modern art show. Okay, because art changes. Modernism comes into art, and then it comes into literature. Virginia Woolf is famous for being sort of an example of this, and which is why I can't read Virginia Woolf. It's like it's written to be intentionally difficult. Okay, it tries to take on issues.
And are you talking about modern literature?
Yeah,
or
I'm
what
talking
do
about modern literature,
okay.
and it's a lot of the point of. Well, I'm talking about modernist literature. That's a different thing. Modernism is modern, but modernism is this almost ideology of literature and of painting and of all those things. So a lot of these books, and Marquez, the book that we talked about, is one of them. They're written to be intentionally difficult. You're supposed to struggle with these things, right? And even Gatsby, and not all modernist books are bad. Some are very good. I think Gatsby is an example of this. It's modernist, but it's good. Hemingway's in his own way a modernist, but he's got a little bit more of the storyteller in him than some of the other modernists do. But there's Madame Bovary would be another example of this, where you have these people we're shuffling off the old Christian value system. We're going into the brave new world of moral relativism, and you see that all through these books.
But isn't Madame Bovary before 1910? Just to be clear,
it may be.
I think it
but
is.
it's French.
But it's headed that direction.
Okay, after 1910 and the French. Okay, let's just face it.
So would you say that there could just be a genre you don't like?
Oh, absolutely. But also, I think we have to be careful too, especially when we talk about books like Wuthering Heights. There are people who love Wuthering Heights more than Jane Eyre. I mean, I think
What?
we're totally split there.
That does surprise me. I love Jane Eyre, but I liked Wuthering Heights. Okay.
Yes, I think it's totally split. And we've had many arguments upstairs about this.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who are Wuthering Heights to the death.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our personal opinions aren't necessary. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not a value.
Exactly.
Well, and I think that, the way I feel about it is I have basically conceded to myself that it's my deficiency on Wuthering Heights, because I have so many people who I deeply respect who like that book. I've just in the back of my mind, I've just said, well, I'm marking that off to my own inadequacy in reading this particular book.
And I think that is reading maturity, is when you can say, I don't like this book. It is still in print 200 years later. So why? And really just try to figure that out. Because then it feels like it's personal.
Yeah.
All these other people love it, but I don't know about James Joyce.
I think James Joyce is like the paradigm modernist in this regard, and his books get more and more difficult. You can read Dubliners, and it's actually still
a story.
And then, but by the time you get to Finnegan's Wake, which is his last book, it's utterly impossible to even understand. But we're supposed to like it. The thing about modernist books, we're supposed to like them.
And there is a difference. There is a difference between a book that's hard and a book that's bad.
That's true.
Because some difficult books are absolutely worth your while.
That's
and
right.
You might say, oh, that was really good. I'm glad I did that. Yeah. That was an accomplishment. And then some, it's like, no, this is bad.
Yeah. Right. But I think to Martin's point, right, like up until about 100 years ago, books were written to be enjoyed, right? We may find it difficult to read. I find Dickens difficult to read.
Even Great Expectations? I could understand that.
No, I
Tale
agree
of
with
Two
that.
Cities, I can read.
But it's worth the trouble in the end.
It is. But like Hard Times and I find them hard to read.
You're breaking my heart.
I know. You two Dickens lovers over there. But I recognize that Dickens was read to be enjoyed, right? And if I got something in the mail, a magazine in the mail once a month that had a Dickens chapter, I probably would follow along, right?
Yeah.
But like you stick that massive tome in my hands, and I'm like,
they were serialized to start out with.
Yeah,
so
from
that's
the
a good
get-go,
point.
I'm a little disappointed in this. However, but what you have in the past 100 years is books that are starting to be written not to be enjoyed. And I think that's Martin's point.
But they're written to be like some kind of art form.
Yes, yes.
That's interesting.
And so,
well, it's like a Picasso,
right?
It's not following the regular rules, and they're sort of writing the rules as they go along, and you're supposed to appreciate it.
The masterpiece.
Yeah,
right. And I love Graham Greene. But Graham Greene, I cannot read at the speed that I can read other things.
Right.
Just because the way he says things is different. It's, he's writing mid 20th century English style. That's just not what I'm like.
Paul loves him, but he's not in the canon yet.
He's not. That's right. But just talking about style and ability to read, he's very clearly just trying to tell a story. And that's why I don't lump him in with the modernists.
Yeah. Sure.
Right.
And don't you think there's something to a book that came to you at the wrong season of life?
Oh, definitely. And I think a lot of the books that I read in college were modernistic literature. And I was not ready for that. But I also read, a lot of, like the Bronte sisters and Dickens and Twain and lots of good things. But there were also, some college professors who loved to delve into those.
I had I've said this before on the show. My high school English teacher loved Steinbeck, and I all through high school had to read. Why would you do that to a high schooler? I don't know some of that.
Steinbeck's hard for high school.
I can't.
Well, the
do
language in those books.
Oh, and the stories.
I
Lenny and the Mouse make me so sad.
Yeah, I
can't do it. But I'm sure maybe if I could pick it up today, I wouldn't feel the same.
That you would.
Steinbeck's one of those authors where he's writing in a modernist mode, I think, but he's such a good natural storyteller that you still enjoy many of them. I enjoy Grapes of Wrath and trying to think of East of Eden. I think they're amazing because he is just a natural storyteller. Got modernist elements in there, but you can still enjoy it despite that because he's such a good storyteller.
I can hear our old friend Mitchell Hawley talking. Have you ever heard him go on his rant about why he will not read Hemingway?
No.
Because of his character. Because he made, some questionable life choices. And we got in a long discussion about Hemingway once, and he
then
just
you couldn't read anybody.
Well, that's
right.
But some people,
I feel
make decisions like that.
I've made that case to Mitchell. Mitchell reads people that have had awful lives.
His principles are a little convoluted.
He just has a particular dislike for Hemingway.
He does.
And actually, I have a particular liking of Hemingway.
Well, a lot of people do.
Yeah, I do. It depends on what it is. The book I thought I would like the least, which is Death in the Afternoon, about bullfighting, was one of the most fascinating books I've ever read. And yet there's some of his others, that I just don't really appreciate as much. But I do think he has some. And by the way, there is a very, very good book. It's one of my favorite books on literature. And it talks about Hemingway, and it talks about some of these other modernist authors, and it's written in an appreciation. And when I read them, I think I should like these books. It's called Time of Need by William Barrett. I think it's out of print, but you can still find it. He wrote several other really good books of philosophy and literature, and but I have read that book several times, and it's just such a beautiful appreciation of these authors I hate.
Right. Well, that's funny. How do you know when it's time to quit?
You mean with a particular author or with a book?
Well, either, but a book.
When I'm bored, I quit.
Really?
Yes.
That's why I rarely ever say what I'm reading, because I've quit it by the time we record.
But I have, I feel like there have been books that I have trudged through because of book club.
That
I would have put aside.
And now you're glad you finished them, like Wind in the Willows.
Typically, now,
to be able to discuss it. That's why I finish it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad showing up to discuss it and I haven't finished it, right? But no, one of the ones that I put down, so I have two here that I've put down, Lila by Marilyn Robinson.
Oh my gosh.
I really struggled with that one. I got halfway through it.
I have the same problem with Marilyn Robinson.
Goodness, I love her
She's
books.
supposed to be so good.
Right.
There's a famous author who we know, who I caught reading a Marilyn Robinson novel in the lobby of the school one day, and I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Oh, it's okay."
I was
wondering who are we talking about?
So the other one that I put down was it was either Neon Rain or Rain Gods.
Oh,
by James Lee Burke.
So that's not
when we started this, we had to come up with a list of books we didn't like. I said, I'm just going to take every book Martin has recommended and list it.
And put it on the list.
And
which is just a commentary on his inadequacy. And
it is.
No, you just kept recommending modern books to me
instead
of recommending classics to me, or something about the classics or something. And that one, to me, it was trite descriptions. That's what got me.
I think he's a brilliant author.
He is a brilliant.
Descriptions of...
I have this vivid recollection of, in the story, the bad guys going out of this restaurant, and the sheriff's deputy shows up behind them, and just the description of her pulling out the gun, glinting in the sunlight, and the description of it. I was like, this is... I was tracking until that moment, but there was almost like a glorification of the description of the gun, everything. And I'm like, no, it's a tool. And I just got so frustrated with that. I was like, I'm done. Literally toss it across the room and said, I'm going to go get a different book.
So that's when Paul quits.
That's right.
Well, and that
when
was
he's
the second,
irritated. He's not bored, he's irritated.
That was a book. It's a book that's part of the two books. It's a cycle, sort of. And it has the best bad guy.
The best bad guy ever.
read.
Well, it was the second book.
I think it's three. Yes, Preacher Jack.
But it was the second book that Martin had recommended to me. The first book was a different author, and I had not liked that book. And so I gave Martin a second chance. And when I got to that and I was irritated, I said, I'm done.
It is funny, though. You said there's so many you don't finish. You've recommended so many books to me and even brought me books and said, I really like this book, but I'm probably not going to finish it.
Well, that is, so what makes you, what makes
Been
you,
called out.
what makes you finish a book that you don't like as opposed to stopping?
Like if other people are depending on you to read it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
or if the book has been given to me and that person expects me to go back to them.
Okay. Because I mean, I've
Not Martin.
Just several books here that I just totally gave up on. I'm supposed to like The Master and the Margarita.
Oh, it's on my list. I finished that though.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry for you. It was awful. And it's supposed to be a great Christian classic.
No. I think the only thing that made that book important was that the communists banned it.
Okay.
So there's some scandal.
Yes, I think that's the only reason that book ever got on a list.
And
banned books is kind of an interesting.
Yeah. But, like, I can't read Ayn Rand.
Oh, really? A lot of people love Ayn
so
Rand.
Bad. It's just this unreal cardboard world that she's invented.
I mean, I have to say, I read Atlas Shrugged. And
that's the one I have on here.
I did enjoy it, but it was in my early years before I probably had much discernment. Probably.
That's funny.
Yeah. And others I finished, but I don't know what made me finish them as opposed to abandoning them.
Right.
But you abandoned Master Margarita and Atlas Shrugged?
Oh, and Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, Ulysses by, what's his name?
James
Joyce. Yeah, I mean, at some point you just say, enough.
Got it. Okay.
But I do, if it's a classic, I really do try to get through it because I feel like I'm the one missing something.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think,
that enough people have liked this book to where there must be something wrong with me.
Right.
And that's not necessarily true, but it makes you feel that way.
Well, I have two final questions and I wanted to hear from every single person. The first one is a bit of a twist. Is there a danger in constantly critiquing books?
Yes.
I don't want to end the conversation without saying, well, maybe you don't always have to be critical.
Yeah. I mean, I would say yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I think that's the first attitude you should have going to a book is be uncritical. Let it take its hold on you. Well, in other words, just let it, you need to let it master you.
Speak for itself for a minute.
Let it speak for itself. Don't start saying, well, is this, doing this and checking off a little list of things. Just let it work on you and see if it does. And then if it doesn't, and it's getting late in the book, then maybe you need to start asking some tougher questions of, is this really worth my time?
But if critiquing a book is really impeding your first experience of it and your enjoyment of it, because sometimes I read books that are just totally trite, but I read them for enjoyment. British murder mysteries sometimes are not all that good. But if I started critiquing them, I wouldn't read them at all.
Yeah. I think if you you can't really critique it until you read it uncritically.
And I've had a couple of people recently recommend books to me, and they've said, "But I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Like, I want you to go read this and experience this, but I want to talk to you after you're done," which I actually have really appreciated because I've gone in with more of a blank slate than Mitchell didn't like it, right? Or whatever it is. And that allows me to kind of embrace the story as it is and then go, oh, like I didn't like that, or go, wow, actually I was impressed by X, Y, or Z.
Okay, that's a perfect segue. My final question is, can you think of a book that by the end redeemed itself for you?
That you originally thought was, that's a good question. Catcher in the Rye didn't do that for me.
Neither for Tanya.
That was a roller coaster. You started that, and I was like, Martin's going to say that there was...
Right.
No. I don't... That's a really good question. I
mean, for me, I've told this story so many times, everybody already knows, but it really was Gatsby that finally, not by the end of the first, second, or third reads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a hard question for me to answer, but the only one I can even think of, and it really isn't an example of this, but as close as I can get is like reading Dickens sometimes, like Tale of Two Cities. It took me a long time to appreciate, and it was the ending that was great that it redeemed all the time that I had to spend at the beginning of the books. And, and most Dickens books are somewhat that way. You have to trudge through for a while, and all of a sudden the characters start gelling and the plot starts making sense. And then it's like, this is an incredible book. But this is the thing, patience. You've got to have patience to read great literature, because most great literature actually, to some extent, is this way. It's kind of hard.
It takes discipline.
Well, sort of, and in that vein, I would probably say Anna Karenina, because for one, lots of names and different names for the same people, and so you're confused. Also, the first time I tried it, I was listening to it with a poor reader, and I actually stopped it, picked it up a couple years later, and went back to it again. And obviously, once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is, But War and Peace too. I mean, Tolstoy, like, you need 100 pages before you're like,
before you yes,
I think I'm going to like this book.
Right. And there's so many characters, it's even hard to get to know who the characters are. Yes, it's work.
It is
to get into a book like Moby Dick. That was work, but in the end, I'm thrilled that I did it.
Yeah.
Usually it's really big books that just
intimidating.
Well, and a shorter book that actually occurred to me. I really don't really like episodic books that much.
Right.
But because Don Quixote is episodic, Monsignor Quixote by Graham Greene is episodic. And I would say I kind of enjoyed it, but I was sort of like, eh. But then when I got to the last chapter, that's when I was like, okay.
It all comes together.
And it's and that's actually that experience of getting to the end and the twist that Graham Greene's really good at. And that's one reason I love him is because I know I can trust that book, and I know at the end it's going to be amazing.
It's worth it.
But that first whatever.
It's almost like you need to then read it again because you've missed all the whatever is coming that is going to pull it together has been a theme throughout, but you didn't necessarily see that. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, I mean, Moby Dick was the same way. It was just all the way through it. It was pointing toward Ahab's
demise.
Well, not just his demise, but his insane need for revenge against a whale. He was just being a whale.
Well, and that's one of the reasons you want to read a great book more than once, because because in the second reading in your first reading you're not seeing the parts as in light of any whole, because you don't know what the whole is. You only know the whole when you get to the end of the book. So when you read it again, now you can read the parts in relation to the whole, and it makes a lot more sense.
Which is why it's so nice to teach a book of literature.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Because you have to go through it time after time after time, and you just keep finding things.
Yeah.
And your students find things that you didn't find.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, good discussion. And I'm sure that we've stirred a few things up.
Yeah, we probably, there are people out there whose favorite books we mentioned as part of our least favorite books.
That's right. That's right.
If anybody's going to defend Master and Margarita, I'd be interested to hear that one.
Podcast at memoriapress.com.
I'm not reading that. You all have said too much about it over the years.
Well, thanks for bringing your lists and your helpful voices to the conversation. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.